on Smash or Pass that I was doing before. Oh, and it remembered my progress. Okay. I'm gonna butcher these names. I'm gonna butcher them. I love Pokemon. I love them. I have tattoos of Pokemon. The names are hard sometimes. The names are difficult. Be patient with me. They're difficult. Okay? I know this one, Chespin. I'm gonna rapid fire these, by the way. I have like a lot of Pokemon to get through. It's hard reading. It is. Chespin, pass. Quilladin, pass. Chestnut, smash. Fennekin, pass. Braxton, pass. Delphox, pass. Froakie, pass. Fragator, pass. Greninja, pass. Bunnelby, pass. Diggersby, pass. Fletchling, pass. Fletchinder, pass. Talonflame, pass. Scatterbug, pass. Spuapa, pass. Vivillon, pass. Litleo, pass. Pyroar, pass. Flabebe, pass. Baby's in the name. Floette, pass. Florges, pass. Skidoo, pass. Go-Goat, pass. Pancham, pass. Pangaroo or Pangaru, smash. Furfrou, pass. Esper, pass. Meowstic, pass. Honedge, pass. That's a sword. Doublade, pass. 2 swords. Aegislash, pass. Spiritzee, pass. Aromatis, pass. Swirlix, pass. Slurpuff, pass. Inkay, pass. Malamar, pass. Binacle, pass. Biney. Barbarical, pass. Skrelp, pass. Dragolage, pass. Clauncher, pass. Clauditzer, pass. Heliotop, pass. Or this is Heliolisk, pass. Tyrant, pass. Tyrantrum, pass. Amira, pass. Uroros, pass. Sylveon, pass. Halucha, pass. Dedenne, pass. Carbink, pass. Gumi, pass. Sliggoo, pass. Gudra, smash. Klefki, pass. Phantom, pass. Trevenant, smash. Pumpkaboo, average, pass. Gorgeist, pass. Bergmite, pass. Avalug, pass. Noibat, pass. Noivern, pass. Xerneas, pass. Yveltal, pass. Zygarde, pass. Diancie, pass. Hoopa, pass. Volcanion, pass. Rowlet, pass. Dartrix, pass. Decidueye, smash. Litten, pass. Torracat, pass. Incineroar, pass. Poplio, pass. Brionne, pass. Promenia, pass. Smash, I meant. Picky, pass. Trumbeak, pass. Toucanon, pass. Yungoos, pass. Donald Trump, pass. Grubbin, pass. Charjabug, pass. Vikavolt, pass. Crabrawler, pass. Crabominable, pass. Oricorio, pass. Cutiefly, pass. Rebombi, pass. Rockruff, pass. All the furries out here are gonna get mad at me, but I'm saying pass to Lycanroc. All Lycanrocs, actually. Wishmacash, pass. Marini. This is one of my favorite Pokemon ever. Love this mon. I'm just shouting out this Pokemon. I am not smashing this Pokemon. Toxapex, another one of my favorite Pokemon ever. Not smashing this Pokemon. They're gonna be knocking. Let me in. Toxapex, pass. I love that Pokemon though. Mudbray, pass. This is my wife's favorite Pokemon. Mudsdale, pass. Dupiter, pass. Aquatoride, I'm not reading that correctly at all. Fomantis, pass. Lurantis, smash. I like the drip. Morello, pass. Shiinotic, pass. Sandalit, pass. Salazzle, pass. Stuffle, pass. Beware, I just want to give him a hug. This is another one I love, but pass. Bounsweet, pass. Steenie, pass. Serena, smash. Comfy, pass. Why were there so many smashes on that? Oranguru, pass. Pasminian, pass. Wimpod, pass. Golispod, pass. Sandygast, pass. Apollo Sand, pass. Pukimookie, pass. Type Null, pass. Silvally, pass. Minereor, pass. Kamala, pass. Turtonator, pass. Togedemaru, pass. Mimikyu, pass. Brushix, pass. Kamala Harris reference. Drampa, pass. Dalmise, pass. Jangmu, O, pass. Hakamo, O, pass. Como, O, pass. Tapu Koko, pass. Tapu Lele, pass. Tapu Bulu, pass. Tapu Fini, pass. Cosmog, that is a baby. Cosmoen, okay. Solgaleo, pass, but actually Lunala, smash. Ahigo Face, pass. Buzzswole, smash. Pheromosa, smash. Xurkitree, smash. Celesteela, pass. Kartana, pass. Guzzlord, Necrozma, smash, dude. Magerna, pass. Marsh Shadow, why are people smashing that thing? Okay. Poipole, pass. Pass. Staka Taka, pass. I hate Ultra Beast names. Balloon Boy, pass. Zero Aura, just fuck the Ultra Beasts, actually. Fuck them and their names. Melton, pass. Melmetal, smash. That's one big ass boy. Grookey, pass. Thwacky, pass. Rillaboom, smash. Why not? Scorbunny, pass. Raboot, pass. Cinderace, pass. Sobble, pass. Drizzle, pass. Inteleon, pass. Squovit, pass. I hate Greedent, pass. Rookie D, pass. Corvisquire, pass. Corviknight, smash. Blipbug, pass. Dottler, pass. I'm a really big fan of Orbeetle. I would not smash it, but I love this Pokemon. Pass. Nickit, pass. Thievul, pass. Gossifleur, pass. Eldegoss, pass. Wooloo, pass. Dubwool, pass. Choodle, pass. Dreadnought, pass. Yamper, pass. Boltund, pass. Roly-Coly, pass. Charcoal, pass. Colossal, pass. Applin, pass. Flapple, pass. Appleton, pass. Silly Cobra, pass. Sandaconda, pass. Cramorant, pass. Arikuda, pass. Barraskewda, pass. Toxel, pass, but Toxtricity, smash. Sizzlepede, Centiscorch, pass. Clobopus, pass. Grapploct, smash. Sinistea, pass. Poltegeist, pass. Hatina, pass. Hatchram, pass, but Hatterene, smash. Impidimp, pass. I'm also going to pass Morgrem, but I'm not going to pass on Grimmsnarl. Obstagoon, smash. Berserker, pass. Cursula, pass. Surfetched, pass. Mr. Rhyme, pass. Goon is in the name. Runerigus, pass. Milcery, that's milk and cream. No. Phalanx, that's a whole squad, pass. Pincurichin, pass. Snom, pass. Frostmouth, pass. Stonejourner, pass. Ice Cube, pass. Indeedee, pass. Morpeko, pass. Qfant, pass. Copperjaw, pass. Rest in peace, Jaw. Dracozolt, pass. Arctozolt, pass. Dracovish, pass. Arctovish, pass. Duragalon, pass. Dreepy, pass. Draglock, pass. Dragapult, smash. Zacian, pass. Zamazenta, pass. Externatus, pass. Kubfu, pass. Urshifu, smash. Zarude, pass. Regieleki, pass. Regidrago, pass. Glass Trier, pass. Spectrier, pass. Pass. Widrear, pass. Cleavor, pass. Ursaluna, pass. Basculelian region, whatever, pass. Sneasler, pass. Overquill, pass. Enamorous Incarnate, pass. Okay. Now we're on the most recent gen. Now we are on Gen 9. Scarlet and Violet. I do have a Fuecoco tattooed on me. And, oh, that's the Weed Cat. That's Weed Cat. We call him Weed Cat. That's, Weed Cat. But, yes, I have a Fuecoco tattoo, but that doesn't mean I'm gonna smash Fuecoco. He's a little baby and he's precious. Sprigatito. Also, like, this region is all Italian themed, so a lot of the names are, like, either just simple animals or hard to say Italian-sounding names. Sprigatito, pass. I'm not smashing the cat. Florigato, pass. Meowscarada, pass. Fuecoco, pass. Crocolore, pass. Skeledirge, love him, pass. Quaxley, pass. Quaxwell, pass. Quackavale, smash. He's zesty. Lechonk, pass. Oinkalonge, pass. Tarantula, pass. Spidops, pass. Nimble, pass. Low Kicks, pass. Pommy, pass. Pommo, pass. Palmot, pass. Tendamouse, pass. Mousehold, pass. Fido, this is a cute one, and I'm gonna pass on the dogs, but Fido turns into Doshbun. So cute. Pass. Smallive, pass. Dollive, pass. Those are olives. This is an olive tree. Arboliva, Smallive. Who doesn't love Smallive? Squeakbilly, no. Knackle, And then we got Knackle Stack. And then we got Garganacl. And I'm going to pass on the Knackle line. Charcadet, pass. But Armor Rouge? Yeah, let's smash. And Crulet, Cerulege? Yeah, smash. Come on. Tadball, pass. Bellybolt, pass. Wattrel, pass. Kilowattrel, pass. I love Kilowattrel. Mastiff, pass. Mabostiff, pass. Shroodle, pass. Grafefe, pass. Bramblin, pass. Bramblegast, pass. Toadschool, pass. Toadscruel, pass. Cloth, pass. Capsakid, pass. Scovillain, clever name, pass. Rellor, pass. Rapska, pass. Flittle, pass. Espathra? She's a diva, but pass. Tinkatink, pass. And then Tinkatuff is also a pass. And Tinkatun is also going to be a pass. Wiglet, pass. Wugtrio, pass. Bombdurier, pass. Finizen, pass. Palafin, pass. Varoom, pass. Revravoom, pass. Cyclizer, pass. Orthworm, pass. Glimmet, pass. Glimora, pass. Graveyard, pass. Houndstone, pass. Flamingo, pass. Also, I found out that Flamigo is the most searched Pokemon because so many people are just forgetting to put the N at the end of Flamingo. People are Googling Flamigo, so he's like more searched than Pikachu because people just aren't putting the N in Flamingo. Cetadile, pass. Cetatan, pass. Veluza, pass. Dondozo, smash. He seems wise. Good time. Tatsurgiri, pass. Fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here. Stream viewers, cheap viewers, die. Get the fuck out of here. Annihilate, smash. Clodsire, pass. Farigiraf, pass. Dunspars, pass. King Gambit, pass. Great Tusk, pass. Screamtail, pass. Brute Bonnet, pass. Fluttermane, pass. Slitherwing, pass. Sandy Shocks, pass. Iron Treads, pass. Iron Bundle, pass. Iron Hands, pass. Iron Jugulus, smash. Iron Moth, pass. Iron Thorns, pass. Frigibax, pass. Arctic Back, pass. Baxcalibur, pass. Gimme Ghoul, pass. 1000 Pokemon. Goldengo, pass. Wo Chien, I love this guy. I wouldn't smash him. Pass. Chien Pao, pass. Tinglu, pass. Chiyu, pass. Roaring Moon, pass. Iron Valiant, pass. Koraidon, smash. Miraidon, smash. Walking Wave, pass. Iron Leaves, smash. Diplin, pass. Poltergeist, it's matcha. It's matcha tea. So stupid. I love it, but wouldn't smash it. Sinistra, pass. Okidogi, smash. Monkey Dory, pass. Fenzen Pity, pass. Ogre Pawn. I'll do a brain rot smasher pass. What? Pass. Arcadolon, whatever, pass. Hydrapple, pass. Gouging Fire, pass. Raging Bolt, pass. Iron Boulder, pass. Iron Crown, pass. Terrapagos, pass. And Pecharunt, pass. I'm a degenerate, guys. Is it gonna show me who I smashed and passed on? Oh. Monkey Dory. I love Monkey Dory. Just the name. The name is good. Okay. Let's see. These are all my smashes. Forced to look at the consequences of your own actions, I suppose. Oh my god. Fuck you. Some of these are good. What are you saying? Let's not, I mean, like, it's not that bad. Holy shit. Wow. Come on, that's a good ratio, right? Don't we think? I think it is. Man.